The time for Michael Penix Jr. is finally here, and the Kirk Cousins experiment is already over for the Falcons. Penix is the new starter in Atlanta, and the future for Kirk is pretty much a mystery at this point. He got a 4-year, $180 million contract last season, despite coming off of a torn Achilles and being 36 years old by week 1. The Falcons obviously had their concerns because they then took Penix 8th overall at the draft, and honestly, it looks like a great decision looking back, but it was definitely shocking at the time. The two options at the time were either to have an older rookie quarterback sit for a couple of years and wait his turn, or have an expensive veteran who you just signed to a massive contract just not play. The Falcons just hedged their bet, and now that Kirk hasn't been the answer, maybe Penix can be. At least Atlanta hopes so. The risk of signing Kirk Cousins was definitely worth it at the time. He was playing some of his best ball in 2023 before he tore his Achilles. The Vikings were 4-4, but at the time, he had thrown for 2,300 yards, 18 touchdowns, and just 5 interceptions. He's a veteran guy who's had some good seasons and even helped his team make the postseason, whether that was in Minnesota or Washington. If he was that same guy in Atlanta, it would have gone really well, but he wasn't. Kirk threw a career-high 16 interceptions to go with 18 touchdowns and 3,500 yards, and the Falcons ended up going 7-7 with Kirk behind center. He was supposed to bring out the best of the weapons that the Falcons have, like Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Bijan Robinson, and it just didn't pan out like the Falcons had hoped. And honestly, it's a hard pill to swallow. The Falcons gave him a 4-year, $180 million contract with about $100 million guaranteed. Luckily, most of it will be off the books by 2026, but he's getting paid a ridiculous $62.5 million this season. The final straw was actually a win against the Raiders on Monday night, but it was just so bad. The Falcons won 15-9, but Kirk went 11 of 17 for 112 yards with a touchdown and an interception. Most of the offense in that game came through the run game. It's very possible that that was the last time we'll see Kirk play for the Falcons, and maybe in the NFL. And if it is, he finishes his last 5 games with only 1 touchdown pass to 9 interceptions. Probably not exactly how he wanted his career to end. But now the Falcons have a tough decision to make. If Kirk Cousins gets cut before the new league season, it'll be $65 million in dead money for his guaranteed salary of $27.5 million and $37.5 million the next year. But if he gets cut post June 1st designation, the dead money will be spread over 2 years, about $40 million in 2025 and $25 million in 2026. Now, Kirk also has a no trade clause, so he would have to approve any trade if the Falcons did try to trade him, but if he did, the Falcons would have to eat $37.5 million and maybe even some of his $27.5 million base salary. So it's really not pretty either way you look at it. The Falcons will get out of a $10 million roster bonus if he isn't on the roster on the 5th day of the 2025 league year, but it's really hard to guess the outcome for Kirk right now. But it does feel like he probably won't be with Atlanta come next regular season. This was pretty much the exact scenario that could play out when the Falcons drafted Penix, and that was honestly the biggest shock of draft night for a few reasons. There was just an insane run on quarterbacks early. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May were all clearly going to go high and expected to go top 3 at least, and Penix was talked about as high as maybe going potentially late first round, but nobody expected him to be taken high. But then Atlanta took him as the 4th quarterback off the board, 8th overall, and it was honestly a shock that JJ McCarthy and Bo Nix went soon after too. Penix did have some red flags, mostly his age and injury history, but only one team had to think that he was too good to miss out on, and the Falcons clearly did. Michael Penix had a pretty crazy college career. He was a 3-star pro-style quarterback in the 2018 class and committed to play at Indiana. He was good for the Hoosiers when he was actually playing, but that was pretty rare. As a true freshman, he tore his ACL and redshirted, and he was named the starter the next season and started 5-1, but suffered an injury to his non-throwing shoulder that ended his season. He started 5-1 again in 2020, but then tore his ACL in the same left knee. Penix then returned for the 2021 season and suffered an AC joint sprain after a 2-3 start. It was honestly a mess for Michael Penix in Bloomington. He then decided to transfer for the 2022 season and opted to play for Washington and head coach Kalen DeBoer, who, funny enough, was actually the offensive coordinator at Indiana in 2019 and is now the head coach at Alabama. And luckily for Penix, he didn't suffer the same misfortune in Seattle. He won the AP Comeback Player of the Year in 2022 after he passed for 4,600 yards, 31 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. The Huskies ended up going 11-2 and won the Alamo Bowl against Texas. But that wasn't quite his peak. 2023 was huge for Penix. Washington had an undefeated regular season and even beat Texas in the college football playoff semifinal. The Huskies did then lose to Michigan in the national championship, but it was just a magical season. Penix was fantastic and was named a first-team All-American. He threw for 4,900 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions on the year. The injuries were a concern, but there was clearly enough on tape to show that Penix had what it takes to be a good NFL quarterback. It was a long time to wait to see Michael Penix make his first NFL start. The Falcons probably expected to be in the mix for the postseason, and I guess they still are, but it's definitely not because of Kirk Cousins as of late. If Penix can make an almost postseason team better, the Falcons have to switch to him. Now, it is entirely possible that the Giants are the best team to have a rookie quarterback debut against. They are absolutely horrendous, and that was pretty clear in this one. The Giants actually went up early with the Tyrone Tracy Jr. touchdown from Drew Lock, but the Giants didn't score again. The Falcons just dominated from then on, but Penix didn't have a touchdown. Atlanta went on to win 34-7. Riley Patterson hit 2 field goals, Bijan Robinson rushed for 2 touchdowns, and both Jesse Bates and Matthew Judon had pick sixes. Now, with that being said, Penix did have a solid performance. He went 18 of 27 for 202 yards and did have an interception, but it's hard to say that that interception was his fault. He literally threw the ball to Kyle Pitts, and somehow the ball pops out of his hands and gets picked off. Definitely not his fault on that one, but it was a fine performance. He doesn't need to light it up day one, because at the end of the day, he's a rookie, and rookies are going to learn. Now, the Falcons are still in a position to fight for a postseason spot, but it probably won't come from a wild card. The Vikings have already pulled away this season, and both the Packers and Commanders already have double-digit wins, while the Falcons sit at 8-7. It's ultimately going to come down to a battle for the NFC South crown between the Buccaneers and the Falcons, and whether or not Atlanta makes the postseason or not, it's pretty clear that the Falcons as of right now aren't contenders. It's really all about the future now, and if Penix can play well for the next 2 games, the Falcons should feel pretty good. Now, if you missed Penix's debut, don't worry, you won't have to wait too long to watch him on prime time. Atlanta visits Washington for Sunday Night Football next week, and it'll be his first road test in prime time against likely a playoff team. Marshawn Lattimore is likely the best cornerback he'll face as a rookie if he plays, but it'll also be really cool to see that battle between 2 rookie quarterbacks. Penix is just now getting his shot, while Jaden Daniels has already well solidified himself as a top rookie quarterback, with Bo Nix not far behind him. Then, once the new year rolls around, the Falcons close out against the Panthers. Now, Carolina is bad, and they have been the worst team in the NFL at times, but Bryce Young looks like a completely different guy now. His rookie season was absolutely brutal, and he was even benched earlier this season, but now Bryce looks good. He's already been through a lot in the pros, and Penix should be making his 3rd NFL start, which is just crazy because Penix is over a year older than Bryce Young. He is an older rookie, and that means he's gonna need to show more off the bat. The next 2 weeks are going to be huge for the development of Michael Penix and the future of the Falcons. The Kirk Cousins era looks to be over, and honestly, that was pretty fast for that big of a contract. And now it's time to turn to a new page. Atlanta brought in 2 new quarterbacks for a reason. The veteran didn't pan out, so maybe the rookie will.